What is up, my YouTube friends? Welcome back to the channel. It's 2020 and it's about time we were looking at some new things. So today we're going to be looking at the Yukon Exelon 3x50 night vision. So basically what we've got here is the Yukon 3x50. It's a Gen 1 Plus night vision from Yukon, obviously. It's also available in 4x50, but this is the 3x50 model we're going to be looking at here today. Let's get straight in the box and have a look. Instructions, you know our motto on the instructions, don't need it. So we get a nice little carry case here. And inside we've got the Yukon 3x50 night vision monocular. So just a little bit of background on the night vision. Yukon is definitely one of the major players in the night vision world. They've got a huge range of night vision binoculars, monoculars, rifle scopes, that kind of thing. This is one of their more entry-level models. However, it is a decent model. It's not the very basic model. This is a Gen 1 Plus model, which basically means it's got a Generation 1 tube inside. However, as Yukon call it, it is a Super CF tube, which roughly translates to a slightly modified overclock tube, which gives you better performance than your standard Gen 1. So the way to think about it really, I suppose, is if you were having a light bulb that was a 100-watt bulb, the bulb would be engineered or modified to run at 120 watts instead of 100 watts. I mean, basically you're getting more output than you would do a standard Generation 1 model. On the box, I'm intrigued to see slightly that they basically compare it to a Generation 2, which, to be honest with you, in my humble opinion, it is absolute nonsense. If you ever look through a Gen 2 model and a Gen 1, obviously even a Gen 1 Plus, you'll see, if you pardon the pun, the difference is night and day. The Gen 2 model is significantly better. I hope to have a look at a Gen 2 model fairly soon. We'll see if we can get one. So if we just look at the back of the box here, I know this is a bit boring, but it's worth sort of reading and digging into. The Exelon night vision monocular is the CF tube, so that's the overclock tube. Is the newest professional device in its category, slightly out of date now. These models have been around for probably about 5 years now, and it's comparable with a Gen 2 Plus night vision, which it's not. The Exelon is a result of an entirely new approach to NV technology. I think that's referring to the overclocking. A unique optical design of the objective lens coupled with the newly developed tube has contributed to improve the image quality in the entire field of view. So that is true. The overclock tube does give you better performance in terms of image integrity, in terms of clarity, in terms of overall performance than a standard Gen 1. And what else does it say? Performing at the highest level achievable in its class. The Exelon is a sure choice for any professional or amateur observer. So I do agree with that. The Exelon is better than all the other Gen 1 models that I have seen, and that comes down primarily to the build quality, but mostly due to the overclock tube. So looking at the scope, we've basically got what we've got on most night vision binoculars: an on and off button, an IR button, which is the infrared. The infrared is the little secondary lens on the front that throws out the infrared light. And do you know what? That's all we've got on this model. Super easy to use in that sense. You've got the eyepiece there. Adjusting the eyepiece adjusts the contrast, the sharpness, if you like, of the image. And You've also got some adjustment in the objective lens, and that really needs to be adjusted depending on the distance that you're looking at. In that way, it's like most monoculars, non-night vision monoculars, you have to adjust the objective lens to get that sharpness at the level of magnification or distance that you're actually viewing at any given time. The batteries that this bad boy uses, I think, are the CR123A, not currently in there, gonna have to put one in shortly. The CR123A is a very small battery, and it primarily is used for digital cameras, torches, that sort of thing, and you can find them at pretty much most supermarkets, those sorts of places, so they're pretty easy to find. It's always handy to have 2 or 3 batteries in your pack, in your pocket when you're out at night with one of these things, because the last thing you want is the battery to go when you need it the most. Speaking about the battery, one of the questions that I get asked a lot is how long does the battery last? Well, that comes down to a couple of different factors. Firstly, if you think of a torch, you don't have a torch switched on all the time. If you did, the battery life would be very, very small. You only use the torch as and when, and therefore the battery seems to last quite a long time. And that's the same with the night vision. If you were to have the actual unit switched on and you measured how long the battery lasted, you probably get about an hour out of it, something like that. But the reality is that 1 hour's use can span sort of multiple trips, multiple nights, because what you find is when you're out and about, you're looking at something and you switch it off, you're looking at something and you switch it off, so therefore you're conserving the life of the battery. So probably one battery will last you 2 or 3 nights of reasonable use. As I say, it's always a good idea to have a secondary battery in your pack, so you can just flip it over when the one you're using starts to fade. The other thing to remember as well is that this has a inbuilt infrared illuminator, and there aren't any settings for that other than on or off. On some of the digital models you can vary the strength of the infrared, but on these analog models you tend not to be able to do that. That being said, if your IR is switched on, it's going to considerably consume more battery power than if it's not switched on. Common sense, I know. However, what you will find is that if you're in absolute darkness, you will not be able to see a thing through this unit unless you do have the infrared light switched on. The use of the unit without the infrared light is pretty much limited to dusk, dawn, those sorts of times where there is some light, a bit of ambient light but very little light, and without the infrared illuminator it's pretty useless, to be honest with you. Okay, so on the front we've got an objective lens cover. If you take that off, nice that it's actually tethered to the actual scope with a bit of plastic, because trust me, you're always losing these. And what you'll also find is there's a very small hole in the objective lens cover, and that is so that you can actually run the device in daylight. I don't really know why you want to, other than to test that it works, because that will just let a very small amount of light into the lens, to the tube, and it won't overload the tube. If you did happen to switch this on in daylight, broad daylight, or even at night, in, for example, front of a car headlight, you would probably find that the unit would go into standby, because it would recognise that there's too much light going through and potentially you're going to damage the tube, at the very least burn the tube. So you don't want to do that. So an important thing to remember is don't switch them on during the day unless the cap's on, unless you're in a dark room, obviously. Okay, so the cost of this unit in pounds, I looked, and you're looking at about £250. That's not the recommended retail price, that's what I would call the Amazon price. Now, the Amazon price is always a pretty good guide, as you know, everything's pretty cheap on Amazon, so expect to pay about £250 for this model, The 4 times magnification is a little bit more expensive. With that, obviously you're bringing things that a little bit closer. The basic usage is identical, the unit looks identical, but you're going to find that you've got a slightly narrower field of view with the 4 times magnification over the 3. One of the reasons the Gen 1 Plus models are coming to the end of their lifespan now is that they are not producing the Gen 1 tubes anymore. They are still producing the Gen 2 and Gen 3 tubes, but the Gen 1 tubes are now obsolete. This model, like all Yukon models, contains a tube that was made in a factory in Belarus, and they were the only factory left that were still producing these tubes. Now I have to say that quite a lot of Gen 1 night vision units use the tubes from this factory, but they're all graded, these tubes, depending on how good they are, from A to D. I think that's how they do it. Now I have to say that Yukon, because it's such a big player in the market, tended to get the first pick of all the tubes. So Yukon tended to get the A tubes, the B quality tubes, and the other brands out there tended to get the C and D class tubes. And you'll know the difference when you look through them, because an A class tube tends to be less marks on the screen, is probably a good way of putting it, whereas your D and C class tubes tend to have more image compromise, in the sense that when you look through them there are marks. That's a simple way to explain it, marks on the screen, and it's not a fault, it's just the signature of the tube basically. Overall though, if you're in the market for an entry-level night vision monocular, I would say have a look at this. It is coming to the end of its lifespan now. As with all Gen 1 models, they're not producing the tubes anymore, but if you can get hold of one, it'll give you 2 or 3 years use. It does come with a 1-year warranty, and just a general decent thing to have in your pack if you're in the market for one. Okay guys, I hope you liked our little look at the Yukon Exelon 3x50. If you did, please give us a like. If you didn't, give us a like anyway. Hope you subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next one.